Okay. Welcome everyone to the occasional meeting of the Regional Center Community Council. Don't adjust your set. We're over in City Hall today rather than Alderney. So we do have quorum. So I'll begin by with the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So approval of the minutes from December 9th, being the last time we met. Councillor Clary moved, second by Councillor Hinch. All in favor? Aye. That takes care of our minutes. Approval of the order of business, additions and deletions. Ms. Clerk.
Chair Austin, the clerk's office does not have any additions or deletions, but I believe we have a change of item sequence.
We did talk about that. Colleagues, we were thinking at agenda review that we should do the variance first. There's no point making people wait around through our presentation that's mainly for us. So we're proposing to reorder those two if everybody is all right with that. I'm seeing lots of heads around the room, so we'll go ahead and we'll make that change. Any other additions, deletions, changes? Would someone like to move the amended order? Moved by Councillor Clary, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So we're set for our order of business. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have any conflicts to declare today? Seeing none. Motions of reconsideration, none. Motions of rescission, none. Consideration of deferred business. There is, but we've moved that further down. Notices of tabled matters, none. So that brings us to our variance appeal, 10.1.1, appeal of variance refusal for 1681 Oxford Street. So we'll start this with our staff presentation. I'm assuming you would be Mr. Aaron Bliss. Welcome.
And the presentations.
So yeah, do you have the mouse? So just full screen it, and then you can go use the mouse to go forward or that, and that goes back.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is my first time at Regional Center Community Council, so to quickly introduce myself, my name is Aaron Bliss, and I am a Planner 3 with the Land Development and Subdivision team within the Planning and Development Business Unit at HRM. I'm here to walk you through tonight's variance appeal hearing for additions to an existing 2-unit dwelling located at 1681 Oxford Street. For context on the location, the subject property is located southwest of the Oxford and Jubilee intersection, which is located a few blocks north of Dalhousie University. The subject property is shown within the red circle on this slide's map. To provide some background on this application, the subject property is zoned ER3 under the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw. In June of 2024, Planning and Development staff were made aware of construction activity at the subject property, which did not receive the required permits from our office, including 2 rear additions to the building. the addition of a basement dwelling unit and decks, one on the left side of the dwelling and one on the rear of the dwelling. 4 compliance orders were issued, and the applicant has since applied for all necessary permits to bring themselves into compliance. While the basement unit has been permitted through an issued building permit, all other undertaken construction work failed to meet the ER3 zone land use bylaw requirements. The applicant has applied for a variance application for 5 variance requests to comply with all ER3 zoning requirements not being met by the undertaken construction work. Yeah, this slide is to give you a better understanding of what the variance requests are for and where on the property they are needed. When I say left and right, I'm referring to the left and right side of the house if you are looking at it straight on from Oxford Street. Starting at the top left of the site plan, we can see the left deck variance request for a reduction from the required 1.25 meter side yard setback under zoning requirements to 0 meters. Moving clockwise, we see the accessory building separation variance request, reducing the required 1.25 meter distance between main and accessory structures to 0 meters. An important clarification, this is to accommodate the smaller rear addition on the dwelling's left side that was built too close to an existing legal accessory structure, not for the accessory structure. Moving further along clockwise, there is the minimum rear yard setback variance request for a reduction from the required 6 meters required by zoning requirements to 0 meters for the rear deck addition. Continuing along clockwise, the 4th request is for a reduction of the same minimum rear yard setback requirement of 6 meters under zoning rules to 1 meter to accommodate the larger of the 2 rear additions. And finally, the minimum right side yard variance request for a reduction from 1.25 meters required by the land use bylaw to 0 meters to accommodate the same rear addition to the dwelling. Here are some photos of the work undertaken, starting with the left side deck. The photo on the left was taken standing on Oxford Street, and the variance is needed to allow for its proximity to the side property line. Here are photos of the rear deck, which is tucked in between the accessory structure on one side and the larger rear addition on the other. The photo on the left was taken by staff standing on top of the rear deck. The roof that can be seen on the right side the right side of this photo is the roof of the 1-story high accessory structure on the lot. The deck is shown in the red circle on the photo, shown on the right side of this slide. A variance is required to permit its proximity to the rear lot line. Here are photos of the larger 2-story rear addition. The photo on the right was taken standing on Jubilee. The rear addition can be seen sticking out over the covered parking area, and the accessory structure, the rear addition is circled in red. Here are 2 more photos of the rear addition for context, taken from the properties behind the subject property. The variance is required to permit its proximity to the side and rear property lines. Here are some photos of the covered parking area. The variance is required to allow for a reduction in the minimum separation distance between the main structure and the accessory structure required by the land use bylaw. The Halifax Charter sets out the 3 criteria shown on the slide by which the development officer may not grant variances to requirements of the land use bylaw. To be approved, any proposed variance must not conflict with any one of the criteria. In this case, the development officer determined that all 3 criteria did not meet. To go through the criteria, the first one, does the proposed variance violate the intent of the land use bylaw? Building setbacks help to ensure that structures maintain adequate separation from adjacent structures, streets, and property lines for access, safety, and aesthetics. The variance requests would not maintain a reasonable separation from adjacent properties, and it is the development officer's opinion that the requested variances violate the intent of the land use bylaw. 2 is the difficulty experienced general to properties in the area. The lot sizes in this area around the intersection of Oxford Street and Jubilee are not consistent in shape and vary in size. But the subject property at 464 square meters in size, or 5,000 square feet, is larger than the minimum lot size required in the established residential 3 zone, and is an average property size in the area. There does not appear to be any unique circumstances on this property that would warrant the need for a variance, and so the development officer determined that the difficulty is general to properties in the area. And then for the last criteria, is the difficulty experienced the result of an intentional disregard for the requirements? The owner has previously applied for and received approval for permits in the past. A building permit to lift the house to create habitable space in the basement was issued in 2014. Under these circumstances, the development officer has determined that there was intentional disregard of the land use bylaw requirements. When considering an appeal, Community Council may make any decision that the development officer could have made, meaning their decision is limited to the criteria provided in the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter, which are the 3 criteria I just mentioned on the previous slide. There are 2 alternatives for Community Council today, which are that Council may overturn the decision of the development officer and allow the appeal, which will result in the approval of the variance, or Council may uphold the development officer's decision and deny the appeal, resulting in refusal of the variance. This is the recommended alternative. And that's all I have for you. Thank you for listening, and let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. So we do have questions of clarification. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. If the variance is not permitted, if it's denied, then what happens in this situation? What happens? What does the landowner require to do?
To you, Councillor, through the chair. So what would happen is we would continue on with the already started notice to comply, and we would request that the property owner amend the design to meet the land use bylaw requirements, which, yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Sort of. So the construction has already begun. It's not completed, though. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So then he would have to comply on making changes to it, cut it back, redesign. Yeah, we're not telling him he has to take the whole thing down, but in fact, there's going to be a considerable amount of work to be done.
Yeah, that's correct. It would likely result in removal of some of the already constructed portions of the building.
And the wood looked to be weathered, so has it been, this been going on for a while? Do you know, Jaron?
All I can say is that staff were made aware that it was happening in June of last year, so I can't speak to exactly when it started, but.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to keep up, Mr. Chair. Yeah. I'm having a hard time sort of keeping up with I'm trying to go back and forth from the proposal slide, like the map of the yard, and then to the video, the slide show, and sort of see what the piecemeal it just feels piecemeal of how this is evolving. Is there a layer of this that would have been, I guess, until it's reviewed and the variance is decided, if we were to send building inspectors in, that would have to be after that? Is that the case? Because it just
yeah, to answer your question, just due to the order of operations,
yes.
Basically how these types of situations are handled is that land development goes first.
Yeah.
So we review to kind of set the boundary of the hypothetical box that someone can build in. And then once that's determined, then the property owner will still need to receive all necessary permits, which will include a full review by our building officials. And any changes that are needed to meet building code standards will need to be done after the variance is
Okay.
determined.
And
Yeah.
so there was a point at which you said, I think all required permits are now in place? What was that? What's that one about? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Just to clarify, all the required permits have been applied for, and we're working
Applied
through the
for.
review. They have not been approved. The only one that was approved and issued so far was for the basement unit, which has been given a full building permit and occupancy. Yep.
And is that already occupied?
I'm not sure if it's
I'll ask
occupied or
the-
not yet.
I'll ask the owner. And looking at the same map, the first one, and I know I mean, how close to accurate is this in way of other properties that are also potentially zero setback or pretty close?
Yeah, so there are a number of properties in the area that have buildings that have existed for quite a bit of time that predate the regional center land use bylaw.
Okay.
So there are a few other properties that have reduced setbacks to what the requirements of the day are.
I don't know how much time I have left. Okay, good, thank you. Just looking at what picture? The last one, I think, yeah. That I'm not understanding the one that says covered parking area. What am I looking at in that picture with the porta potty?
Yeah, so in this case, the small building on the right side photo there that you see, it is an existing accessory structure. And then you can kind of see that there's like a line that cuts down the middle of the
Yes,
structure.
yeah.
The right side of that is a covered parking area. It's not fully enclosed. The left side of it is fully enclosed. That structure is existing, and are no issues from our perspective
okay.
with it.
But so what's the circled?
So the circled area is just to highlight what the covered parking area is. The reason that there is a need for a variance, if you see on the left photo, there's a small rear addition to the actual house that was built.
And it butts up to the other, whereas we should have
Yeah, the land use bylaw requires a 1.25 meter separation between
separation,
buildings,
that's the word, yeah.
and
Okay.
it's not being met. Yeah.
And so that's under review here. Okay, all right, that's enough for me for now. I'm still sorting through this a bit.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Aaron, if the variance is denied, how long does the owner have to comply, to get it in order?
That would be dealt with through our compliance officers and building officials. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that today.
Okay. Does no one here know that answer? No. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Aaron. I've got two questions. One thing you just said about what is the zone? Is this center plan zoning that it doesn't? You talked about structures that don't conform. Like, when was that point in time that the current rules started, I guess? And what are they?
Yeah, so the current zoning is the established residential 3 zone under the regional center land use bylaw. That came into effect in 2021. It has gone through several amendments since it came into effect, but the rezoning to ER3 that happened last year during the Housing Accelerator Fund wouldn't have changed the setbacks that we're talking about today.
Okay.
So it would have been in place since 2021.
Okay. My second question is just, I don't know why, I just have trouble understanding the difficulty experiences general to properties in the area. Could you maybe give me another example or something to help me understand that one?
Yeah, so the variance process under the charter is meant for exceptions to the rule. So the second criteria is supposed to say if you have a perfectly rectangular lot that looks identical to everyone else's lot on the neighborhood, then it means that there's no unique circumstances that would warrant an exception to the rules. So sometimes we consider irregular lot shapes for variance applications. For example, if there was an old property that had some very strange lot lines, for example, that's something that we would consider to not be general to
Not
the
like
area.
everyone else's lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if it's consistent with the existing neighborhood, then that's considered to be general to the other properties in the area.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you. I'm back to the photos, trying to figure out what I'm looking at. Rear, can we look at the rear additions? There's 2 photos. And the left one, what is the white tarped area? Is that the addition? I see up on the top, it looks like it's connecting to the house, but extending out off the house on the left. And so am I right? Is that the addition? And so that placement of that outside wall is what is in dispute?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then on the right, what's the circled area?
So the photo on the right was just trying to highlight what the rear addition looks like when you're standing on Jubilee. So if in this photo, you can see the first building you see is the covered parking area. Immediately above that is the rear deck. And then just behind that is the rear addition. So the red circle is just trying to highlight the rear addition sticking out from above the deck.
So, okay, and when we go down below the rear addition, I can see the addition. This looks like the addition is being built on top of the deck.
Yes, they are right next to each other. But the rear addition is 2 stories that goes up from the ground, and the rear deck is attached to the side of it.
And again, that what's out of compliance here right now is that outside wall. And is that a new fence? 'Cause that looks like it's also on the line, unless it's supposed to be allowed. Probably irrelevant to this, but I'm just curious. Okay. Okay, I think that's good for me for now. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor. So next up, this would be the appellant's moment to speak to us. So if Sergey Nilov, yes, sir, come forward. You can come and you can present. You could ask a question to us, and then it would be up to someone on council if they want to ask that. It's not a back and forth. You get 5 minutes to present to us.
Okay, because the question, based on his presentation, I would like to...
Yeah, just come forward if you can. Take a seat there. We'll get your mic going, and you'll have 5 minutes, and you can speak to whatever you want into your presentation relevant to this case.
Thank you for a chance just to present myself in this hearings. And first of all, I have 5 minutes, and I'm trying to compress everything just within given time. First of all, I'd like to apologize if I'm a little bit emotional, because it's a family-related thing for me. So first of all, I have a family, part of my family, close family. My nephew, just my cousin, resides in Kiev, Ukraine. And when war started in 2022, we all hoped that's going to be kind of finished quickly. But it's has been getting worse and worse over time. And while I was talking with them on the phone, I actually heard the banshee. Woo, woo. It's a bombing attack over them. And they're crying, and I'm hearing that in the phone. And I just decided I should accommodate their needs. I should invite them and host them in my house. And it was an emotional decision, but I decided to start building addition as soon as I can. So that's my fault. I do apologize for that emotional decision, as I didn't go through the whole application first. And that's my fault, and I'm totally sorry for that. But as the representative reported already, I have already applied for all the necessary permits and all paid. And unfortunately, I have to underline that I have told them in written and few times that it is unique situation. It is unique situation. I'm trying to save my family from war. And now I'm just seeing it clearly. It is not unique or certain specific circumstances we can do excuse. It's kind of affecting me very deeply. It's a war. What kind of unique situation we need? We need Vladimir Putin attacking Canada. That would be a unique situation. Sorry for that emotional comment. Okay, certainly, as soon as this started building that addition, I keep in mind that I should accommodate probably 4 or 5 people. And my house is not big enough just to accommodate them all. I don't know how long it might be longer, how long it may last, but I decided to build it just good enough space for them. So talking about that formal things, just minimum right side back rear addition. That would be very beneficial if you put your presentation here, and we will see that property line page officially posted on Property Online Nova Scotia, and we can see here, please open it in your documents, that actually it is my neighbor apartment building house, long house. Looks like if it's almost encroaching my property. You may see it 1681 Oxford Street. So I do have enough space just for a rear seat back on this side. My question for the representative of the opposite side is it official information, property line of Nova Scotia? Because you put it in your presentation. I'm assuming it is official. If it's not official, why it is being posted online property of Nova Scotia? It's not excuse for me, but it's something that I should take your consideration in, just to consider that, because I was confused with this information which is actually publicly posted on official website. Talking about minimum rear seat back, rear addition, 6 meters behind the property. If yes, that's my fault. If I put it 6, if I leave that 6 seat back on a rear property, that would be such a small place, such a small space. Just it's not worth it. Just it's like a kitchen size room. It's not enough for 4 or 5 people. That's why I just violated that. Yes, I agree. But I'd like to underline that I did not violate someone's property. That's why I was so concerned about property line on Property Online. Just make sure that I'm not affecting somebody's rights. So minimum lot coverage, 42% of 40 max. So I have applied for a permit for second unit, and I did all the work that required by them just to have a final inspection, and final inspection passed, and everything is good. And this last point, it's regarding decks. I built them on pandemic time. My neighbor, he has German Shepherd dog, and he was proud of that. Dog was never officially trained, and that dog was running, barking on my kids, and my kids was afraid, to be scared, just to be in a backyard, because his dog was barking and jumping even through the fence.
Mr. Nilov, I've let it run a little extra. If you could kind of wrap up.
Yes, sure. I reported that untrained dog behavior to municipality. You may check, and it has been reported. Also, I reported it to police, and I do have a go number for this case, for this situation with German Shepherd. And that gentleman, my neighbor, he promised police officers to build a fence, but he never did it. So I built some fence, but to be on a safe side, I built elevated decks for my kids to be able to play on elevated decks on
okay.
above. And that's
Okay, I think we
Yes.
kind of understand the concern there about the dog. I'm
Yes.
sorry, your 5 minutes is up.
And my only concern is, if necessary to remove decks, I will destroy them. I will destroy everything. But please, yes. Okay, sorry. But yes, I have a question for a representative here.
So the way it works here is, we've heard your presentation, and actually there is a question of clarification coming from a counselor. So it's not a back and forth. If someone wants to ask the question that you've raised among council when we get to the deliberation part, that's where that happens. But you don't get a chance, unfortunately, to ask directly. So we're going to go to Councillor Kent, who has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question for you in relation to, what is the question you'd like to ask? Staff.
Representative here. So just two questions, because they put two new statements here which I have not been provided in advance, because if I has been, I would be prepared more. For instance, there is two important statements here. There is no any unique or specific circumstances for variance to be approved. And secondary, there is a voluntary application violation, something like that. I don't remember exactly the statement, but it was in a screen here. That's serious statements, and I would prefer just to have known about it in advance, so just to prepare my written response for this.
Okay, so just help me understand the second one. Can you say again what you think it was? Voluntary?
It's involuntary violation.
Involuntary violation. Okay, I will ask that to our staff.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
So I have to ask you questions, and so where you have a basement unit now, is that new?
it's new. I have been working that it used.
It's new to you. It's new to this building since you found out you were going to have family members come to Canada. Is that what you're saying?
No, it was not ready at the moment when I start building. No.
Yes.
It was kind of initially it was unfinished basement.
Okay.
Just kind of.
And
Yeah.
so it's a finished basement now, and is the intention that that's for your family?
It's too small. It's too small. I have to accommodate actually two families.
Two families. So
this,
how many units? How many bedrooms are in that basement?
it's a kind of kitchen and a room. Simply speaking, it's just a bachelor.
Okay. And so I'm just trying to understand the process by which you've taken on this project to expand, and that no permits were applied for. Did you know that permits were likely to be needed at the time that you started all of this?
Yes, just I should reveal that, but I was emotionally kind of affected,
Yes, I understand.
because I need to hire engineer. It was a while just to prepare the project and
Yeah.
But my family is just crying on a phone line.
Yes. So I'm going to speak to that a little later. Right now, I just have some questions I need clarification on. You knew, but your emotions got the best of you, and you went ahead anyway. And when did that start? When did you start building?
So I start building 2024, 24, previous year, when it was revealed that war is not stopping soon, because the situation get worse and worse. Russian approaching Kiev, and you probably seen that in the news.
Yes. And you started your building in 2024, and then have you had any correspondence with our staff that squarely put the rules in front of you to give you the chance to correct this along the way before it ended up here?
Yes, of course. The first very day that their representative was on the site and give me that list to stop working, and contacted them immediately. It was a Jew.
And is that when you started the application process? For
Yes.
And how long ago was that?
Good question, because I have applied for all the permits immediately, and I got an answer, just no, and there was, at the moment of January 21st, it was 7 months of consideration by their department, but by now it is almost a year of consideration of this case. I contacted them immediately. On their consideration, it was for 7 months.
Okay, I don't have any time left. Oh, wait.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Kent. I don't see any other questions of clarification. If you can make it fairly quick, yes. Yes, you do. Yes.
And how long do I have?
3.
So you started in 2024. In was it in 2025 this year that it's now it was a year from a year that is up to now. What I'm trying to get an understanding of is how seriously did you take the fact that you're out of compliance? You knew that you probably would be potentially, and now you're here, and I'm trying to get a timeline so that I can have a sense of, did you take it seriously, or has this all been, very quickly thrown together to come here for you? How long have you known that you're out of compliance? And it sounds like from 2024.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I took all the necessary steps, and I would like to confirm that opposite side if I did take all the necessary steps for all the application and paying all the fees. They gave me prescription stop working on June 2024, and since that no work was done, and they checked it a few times.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have been waiting for their decision for 7 months, and actually hearings here was postponed for 2 times for some reason. And I'm just happy that we may finally make a decision of this.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
And also, I just want to answer your question, what question I would ask these gentlemen here, because that's not quite clear with them that I should adjust all the buildings to the code requirements. Yes, I would do the best, but point is, if construction, fundamental walls and ceiling is done already, I cannot adjust it to shrink it to meet the code. I need to fully demolish it and rebuild from the beginning, which is not neither financially or not possible for me. My question is, if I'm still hoping it was a positive decision, may I keep the foundation and walls and ceiling already built as it is, just to complete my addition? That's important thing, because yes, I would do everything that needed for garage roofs or decks, yes, but with solid construction, it's not so easy. I cannot shrink it within given space. Yes.
And that, sir, is the white tarped piece you're talking about. Is that?
Yes,
and
yes,
that, and
yes,
that, so
yes.
You would
Yes.
be asking for the capacity to have the variance okay on that space, but the rest you'll correct. Am I right? in
Yes,
hearing
just
that?
that in the white.
Then in white,
Yes,
in
and
the
now it's fully kind of in conservation, just for more 1 year. But if you make the decision, just make it shrink just to meet the code, it means that I failed. I have to demolish it, which is done on
Okay,
70%.
I understand. Thank you for
I'm hesitant to do this, but I'd like to ask a question. Are folks okay if I ask from here? Okay. So just I'm looking at the site plan here and just trying to make sense of what it's a little confusing, honestly, what's back there. The new building addition, that's the one, if you're looking at your house, this is to the right, like if you're standing on Oxford Street. And did I just hear that you could correct your deck, the left side piece, but it's the addition you put on the right that is the really kind of crux of, that would be very painful to rectify.
Yes.
But the left side yard, the left deck, the rear yard deck, I guess there is the separation distance between house and the accessory building, but it's the right yard addition that's the main concern.
Yes, because it's a living space for people.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. So let me just flip back to my screen in case no one else is on the board. So thank you very much for presenting to us tonight. So now I'm going to call for anyone else who's a property owner within 100 meters if they would like to speak to this. So I know I have to go through it, even though everybody else here is one of HRM. Would anyone else, any other property owners wish to speak tonight? Would any other property owners wish to speak? Third and final call. If anyone's hiding under a chair back there, would anyone else wish to speak? Okay. And now I have to do the same thing for calling if anyone who is not an affected property owner in the general public wishes to speak tonight. Would anyone wish to speak tonight from the general public? Third and final call. Okay. So we don't need to invite the appellant to respond since we had no public speakers. So any questions of Claire? Oh no, that's part of that too. Sorry, I got to skipping down here. Does anyone want an outline from the solicitor in terms of process and clarification? Is there any desire for that? That's our next step. I'm seeing a nod of heads. Mr. Solicitor, earn your keep.
Thank you. Through the chair to the council. So this is an appeal. The development officer has made a decision. Tonight, as councillors, you are wearing your adjudicative hats. And so what is before you is whether to allow the appeal or not. Our rules say that when it is an appeal, it goes on the floor as a motion in the affirmative, right? So it is a motion to allow the appeal. If you vote yes to that, you are voting in favor of granting the variances that have been requested by the applicant. If you vote no, you are voting to maintain the same decision that was made by the development officer.
Councillor Kent, sorry, what was that, Councillor Mincy? We'll go to Councillor Kent for a question to Colin. The list I have here, it seems to differ from our other hearings where staff would come back as part of the course before general debate. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. There'll be a chance after Colin. So Becky has a question for Colin.
Colin, just so I understand, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's all or nothing. We go either all in or not in. I can't separate anything and ask consideration of staff as is if there is, could consider anything related to the building. That's where my head is,
I think
and not the other pieces.
through the chair to the councillor, I think I'd have to ask staff here, were these variance applications, are they separate applications for separate variances, or is it one variance application that is bundled together? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Norman. I'm Development Officer, Principal Planner. The application came in with all of the variances as a collection of one application.
Okay, but they are separate determinations for the development officer. Like if that application came in as one package, the development officer could have approved part of some of the variances but not others. Is that a possibility, or would you have required them to resubmit a new application?
We would have looked to have them separated. If, for example, a portion of the proposal was something that we could approve and another portion would be something that we would refuse.
Councillor Clary, maybe picking up on some of this?
So, yeah, and actually probably our planning staff too. So in the charter for variance requests, because we are also now in the position as a development officer would be, I guess, could we, as that adjudicator now, say no to the left yard setback, but yes to the right yard setback? So yes, the application came in, and as you, as a development officer, would look at this, you would do it in a certain process. But what I'm asking now is, as community council, are we tied to that, or can we also grant a certain request in the variance application and not another?
Through the chair to the councillor, you step into the shoes of the development officer and can make any decision that they could have made. And so my position on this, and it's the same question effectively as Councillor Kent was asking, is that in my view, you could separate it out, that it is possible for this community council to grant a variance for one of the requested variances, but not the others, as long as those are distinct enough within the application. And we don't have, the exact, application itself here, but my understanding is that the right yard accessory building is a separate calculus from the deck and from the accessory building. Yeah.
Councillor Hinch, you were on the board. Did your question get answered along the way there? Okay, excellent. So that would take us from questions from the solicitor on to the main motion. So this is where we'd be looking for a motion to be put on the floor. Councillor White, is this your district? So if you could put the motion on the floor.
So I move that the Regional Center Community Council allow the appeal.
Second by Councillor Clary. Councillor White? Did you have any?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for staff, if the appeal is denied, I think I heard from the owner, that means he has to take everything down. But is the foundation allowed to stay?
Well, we would be looking for a proposal to meet the requirements of the land use bylaw. So the portion of the foundation that's within the required setbacks would not be able to stay, no.
And let me understand when Aaron showed the maps and the different pieces, they were all decks except for the right yard accessible building. That's not a deck, that's an actual building, an accessible building where he's looking to put family in. Is that correct?
So it's a little difficult to see in the photos, but the intention is that there's a third story to go on that addition. So one of the photos that appears to show a deck on the rear addition was just some framing for safety.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and so that was a photo that was taken a number of months ago, and then it's a more recent photo where the tarps are over top of that addition, but the intention is for another story to go on top.
So when, again, I go back to that map that Aaron had, Madam Clerk, are you able to bring that up? Or is that in Aaron's deck there? Can you bring it up, Aaron, please? I'm just... The one that showed the, when you first identified the additions, the left yard, the right yard, and all that one. I can't see it from the mirror. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's right. Sorry. So I'm trying to understand, are each of these pieces an addition to the building that's livable space versus decks?
So it is a little difficult to see, but there is a light gray.
Yep.
That is additions to the home.
Okay.
And then the white areas that are labeled as wood deck.
So there's only there's two additions to the home then. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
But just to clarify, the one on the left, that one is, the issue with that is how close it is to the accessory structure, not with regard, there's no issue with the setback to the left or to the back, for example. The addition to the right, that's the one that we have concerns about, the rear addition, or the rear setback.
The right one is the problem, and the one in the middle, the two gray areas are the problem areas.
The one in the middle, we just have an issue with the separation to the accessory structure, and the one on the right, it's doesn't meet the right side yard setback or the rear setback.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for Councillor Mancini, so the dark gray in the middle is the house, the current house. The light gray on the bottom right is that rear addition. So a couple very quick questions, good snappers. So the rear yard addition, that is, you're saying you're going to add another story, but that's irrelevant as long as it's within the height, within the land use bylaw, and I didn't see a variance request for that, and that wouldn't be allowed under our charter anyway. So that's sort of, I don't want to say irrespective, but it's, what we're talking about is the setback, the rear and the right yard setback. So the question I have is around the variance requests. One in particular was the 42% lot coverage versus 40% lot coverage, because it says in here it's relative to the rear addition and the, I'm trying to find it now, covered parking area. So is that still in dispute? Because I see there's one table in the beginning of the report where it doesn't include that lot coverage, but in another part of the table it does include. So is the lot coverage also being varied or requested to be varied?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
Because the secondary suite was legalized, the lot coverage is no longer an issue.
So we're just dealing with the left, right, backyard setback, and the accessory structure separation distance.
Correct.
And just to clarify, so that separation distance is to the building on the property, not a setback from the property line.
Correct.
Okay. And what is the purpose of the separation distance for an accessory structure from another building on the property. I get it with the setbacks on the yards, the property lines, because you want to get around it, paint it, scrape it, do all those kind of things, maintain it. But for an accessory structure on a property versus another building on the same property, what's the purpose of that setback?
Well, I would say to allow for movement like within the property from one side to another. I think you can see in the photo that it's like right up against the building, which makes it difficult to move from the driveway to other portions of the rear yard.
You have been to the north end, right? Okay. Most houses on Crichton, Maynard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you can't do that anyway. So it's curious that we would regulate that use on a property. Interesting. So I don't want to pull a Councillor Kent here. I'm just going to look at my time. Okay. So colleagues, this is a tough one. And I appreciate the property owner's passion here. And this is 2 times in what, a week and a half? We've had 2 Ukrainians come and blow us out of the water with their presentations at council. Thank you for coming to Canada, and thank you for being a part of our city. I'm conflicted. I desperately want to help here, and there is, I think, a reason to do so. And I almost, it's not part of our process, but I almost want to talk to the property owner again. But based on the comments that he made, my heart wants to say, let's allow the right yard and rear yard setback so that the addition can be utilized as is. And then with regard to the deck's left yard setback, and maybe even the accessory structure separation, but perhaps, a gate or a hole or something can be done with that to allow that movement. But that's, in my mind, a personal choice by a property owner, not so much something we should be regulating. I didn't even see that when we went through that process. Quick question, was that in the Halifax Peninsula Land Use Bylaw previous?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, so we added that one. Didn't even catch that one at CDAC. Okay, I may come back. I'm mulling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Kent and I have 1 or 2 questions from the chair, so you don't need to panic into your next 3 minutes this time, Councillor Kent.
I panic a lot.
You have the floor.
I thought you were taking your...
No.
Okay. So I have a question, but I'm going to leave my question for the end so that I have a chance to discuss, to put my position forward. I'm similar to Councillor Cleary. I really appreciate your passion and your warmth and certainly your love for your family and the devastating trauma that is happening to your entire country. I'm glad you chose Canada as well. And I know I'd be shocked to think that our staff don't as well. Like, this is a difficult one. That's why I was asking about what could we do? What could we say yes to here today that would allow some accomplishment for this property owner, and not only accomplishment, but something worthwhile for the folks that he's hoping will be able to get here safely and intact. So that's and frankly, committee members, we have been given, I think, information from our legal advisor that we can pull these pieces out and approve them. Considering the fact that they weren't there before, I think that's also weighs strongly for me, because I think it's okay for us as a council to say we missed something. We maybe this is not going to be the right bylaw in every case. But, and I feel okay with saying that because we need to acknowledge when maybe things have not quite fit the intention. So I am leaning towards putting that motion on the floor. I'm going to ask my question first. I have one other crack to come back, right? So I'll wait to hear others' comments before I do that. And what I would ask is that we separate out the variance considerations for a vote if we can. So on behalf of after hearing the property owner put forward concerns around two specific things, wondering if you can speak to them, Aaron. One is no unique or specific circumstance. Can you tell us more about that? And also some reference to an involuntary violation. And I'm not sure what either one of those are specific to.
Aaron can of course answer, but I mean, we can't expect you to, represent the other party. So
No, the question is, the party said that was spoken about. And Aaron already spoke about it, so I'm asking him to clarify what he spoke about.
okay, I'm seeing a nod from Aaron.
Yeah,
I don't want Aaron to have to have to try and interpret.
No, I don't want him to either. If he's not sure that what that was about, then say it.
Yes, so to answer your question, I'll start with the diff. So what we're talking about is the three criteria that the development officer is required to consider under the charter. The development officer is not allowed to consider anything outside of these three criteria. It's these three criteria only. So if there is a reason that falls outside of these three criteria, unfortunately, we're just not permitted to consider it. So for the second one is the difficulty experience general to properties in the area. So that's kind of the unique circumstance clause. It's specifically referring to the property itself. Is the property unique in a way that would merit a variance to the requirements? It's specifically referring to the layout of the property, whether there's a weird lot line, kind of a strange design, a unique design, I should say, of the property itself that would merit an exception to the rules. That it only speaks to the property itself. No other unique circumstances can be considered. And then for the difficulty experience results from an intentional disregard for the requirements of the land use bylaw, it's the only question that we ask is, did the property owner know that they needed a permit, and did they apply for one? The question is just that. Unfortunately, again, we're not allowed to consider outside reasons beyond that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor White, and Ms. Clerk, can we give Councillor White 5 minutes? She only put the motion on and really didn't speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Stephanie and Aaron, my question is about the secondary site that's been approved. Kind of was that all part of this and that part got approved? What the timing of that and how it links in? And I guess the 40 to 42%, you're saying that's now not part of this decision. So it sounds like we have 4 variances left, and just help me understand the secondary suite timeline and how that all.
Sure. So the building official and a planner went out to site to take some of these photos a number of months ago, and they went through the home and found a second unit. And so at that time, one of the orders to comply was to apply for a permit for that second unit, which the property owner did, and he did receive the permit for that unit. The regional center bylaw allows for additional lot coverage for when you have additional units. So at the time that the application was made, we thought it was a single unit dwelling, and therefore the lot coverage was only 40%. But because they now have approval for that second unit, they're allowed additional lot coverage, so the variance is no longer required for that coverage.
Okay, so am I hearing that they didn't apply for a permit for the secondary unit that you've now approved as well? Like was the secondary unit, when that was built, was a permit applied for?
No. But it does have a permit now. It has met.
It was
the
not
building.
applied for, a whole unit was built. And then the timing of that, was that back in 2014 or that was recently?
I'm not sure when the unit was built, but when our staff went out to do an inspection, maybe about 6 months ago, roughly, that's when it was discovered.
Okay. I guess I'm just having a lot of trouble with this. I have a great deal of compassion for the war, but I just feel like there's just so many rules broken here and it was known that the permits were needed and were not applied for, so it's really tough. Thank you.
Councillor Hinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at this and see disregard. The disregard is really is so if here's where my head goes. Say if it were me in this position, would I get the same consideration? You think? Okay, that's all I want to know. Because I believe that he did know what he was doing. Yeah, this is a hard one. It's hard. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. So everyone spoke once, so I'm going to ask just a few questions from here. I wanted to ask Ms. Clerk, I didn't see it anywhere in the report, so actually I'll ask the staff and to you perhaps as well, Ms. Clerk. Did we have any correspondence from any of the neighboring property owners?
Yes, we did. We had 3 nights.
Oh, geez, I missed that entirely. I'm seeing some others that also missed that as well. That might.
Yeah, are they attached here or no? I can email them separately, but they are in the meeting request. Great.
Mr. Solicitor, with that, where we have several, would it be appropriate for us to recess so that everyone can have 5 minutes to read that correspondence, since that is part of the hearing record, or the variance?
Yes, I would recommend that we take 5-minute recess. I would also recommend that copies of the correspondence be provided to the applicant.
Okay. So that might take more than 5 minutes. So let's reconvene at 25 after. Everyone will have 10 minutes for a bio break, and everyone can properly have a look at that.
Keep in mind, same thing as last night. You're still wearing your adjudicative hats. Right now, you're in the middle of a process. So not to talk about this amongst yourselves outside of this chamber.
I don't know
with anybody else.
or with anyone else. I don't know that we're actually going to go anywhere. I think we're all just going to open up our email.
That's fine.
It's part of that calendar.
Okay, thank you, folks. Oh. Okay, thank you, folks, for that brief break there. So I had just asked a question about correspondence, which we now all have. Just for absolute clarity, we didn't receive a question. We didn't receive anything from the apartment owners, the building to the immediate right, did we? The correspondence seems to be from owners around the corner on Jubilee. Nothing from planning? No. Okay. Can I ask if we were to grant the variance for the setback on that side where the building is, how much, like what I'm wondering about is the blocking of windows in the apartment building that's to the right?
So that would be managed through the building code. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go back here to the list because that was the end of my questions. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And having reviewed the correspondence again from the one group of property owners who built that new building there, and the fact that they're not here and that no other neighbor wrote in or came to tonight's hearing, for me anyway, speaks to the fact that, you know, clearly in the neighborhood, there's not a lot of opposition to this. But I guess I'm wondering, so where we are in the process now, what I would like, and I don't know, Mr. Solicitor, how we do this, but we've put on the floor a motion to allow the appeal. So at this point, we would have to put some sort of amendment forward if we wanted to separate out items. And so I would have a motion that I would put on the floor to allow the rear setback, to allow the right yard setback, and to allow the accessory structure separation distance.
Mr. Solicitor.
Okay, if I may, through the chair to the committee or the community council, I don't believe, and we should get clarification from staff, that a variance is needed for the separation distance for the right rear addition. That would only be needed for what is on the left-hand side of the property. Is that correct, staff?
That's correct.
Okay. So if I may, if council wanted to split this apart, I think you could do it with something like this, which is that it would be a motion to amend to, and the motions would then read something to the effect of allow the appeal, one, with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the right side yard setback from 1.25 meters to 0 meters, and reduce the rear yard setback from 6.0 meters to 1 meter to accommodate a 2-story addition. Staff, is that? Well, and the second part would be allow the appeal, one, for that piece, and then allow the appeal, two, with respect to the other requests for variances submitted by the applicant. And so if this council was inclined to approve one but not the other, you'd be approving the appeal, voting in favor of the first part of that motion and defeating the second part.
And we have to keep them all in the affirmative.
Correct. But staff, I'd like them to comment on that suggested wording.
I would just clarify that I think the intentions are for a 3-story addition. So should you allow for the rear addition, I would just clarify that it's not just for two stories.
But that doesn't require variance.
No, I just don't want it to get caught up in
Okay.
the semantics of the actual
To accommodate an
wordings.
addition is really all that's needed
Yes.
there. What I was getting at is the applicant requested a rear yard variance reducing 6 meters to 0 meters to accommodate the wood deck. And I didn't want the reduction of 6 meters to 0 meters or 6 meters to 1 meter If you're only inclined to have that apply for this addition but not the decks, then you have to be specific about it.
Okay, so as our solicitor said, my motion would then be to split them, to allow the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 1 for the rear addition, to allow the right yard setback from 1.2 to 0 for the rear addition. I would also like for the accessory structure separation from 1.25 meters to 0. And we might as well put them all on there in the affirmative, and then we can vote on them separately, yes or no. So I would also then obviously split the left side yard setback, and if people don't want that, they can vote no on that one.
Yes, we can absolutely split them as long as we capture them all.
Yeah.
Right?
So the side yard setback for the accessory building, what was reducing it to 1, sorry?
So accessory structure separation distance is from 1.25 meters to 0 meters. And to capture them all, following the solicitor's advice, we'd also have to include the rear setback from 6 meters to 0 for the rear deck, but that would be as a separate item. So it's not confused with the other rear setback. And while the clerk is putting that all on there, I noticed no one has seconded it yet. Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Do we actually need
this is
second? Because we're just splitting it up.
I think
This is
this
an
would be an
amendment?
amendment, just because the wording is so specific here. I think it's better to treat it as an amendment.
So an amendment, and then we would vote on if the amendment passes all these things separately.
Correct. You
Okay.
have to vote the amendment first.
So that was second by Councillor Kent. So we're going to amend the main motion so that we can have all these things separate. So, question on, unless,
I'm not ready to.
We're not ready. The wording isn't up on the screen yet.
oh, okay.
Screen changes.
I mean, it's a distinction without a difference. I think we can just vote on the split, actually, but we need to wait for the wording.
Do you want me to share it up on the screen?
Yeah, I think.
Should be up on your
Shall be taken separately.
Can everyone see it?
Is that all of them? I thought there was 5.
There's 4, so the side yard setback. So do you want to separate the side yard and the rear yard setback for the addition into 2 separate motions?
So there's
Can that be in one?
Yeah, there's 2 rear that need to be separated out. One is rear for the addition.
Yeah.
6 to 1.25.
Yeah.
And then the other rear was
The deck.
the deck.
Which is correct, number 3.
But number 1, I think, can be
But is,
combined.
Yeah.
but, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding something. I see 5 things on that schematic map. Left side yard variance request, accessory building separation, rear yard deck, rear yard addition, right side yard variance. So shouldn't we have 5?
I think
Yeah.
we should have at least 4.
Have the variance table in front of you so you can see all 5 of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't. So I know it's a bit of a lengthy process tonight, but if we can just wait, that would be great. Thank you.
Earning your pay tonight, Colin.
Indeed. So planning's happy with the text there broken out that we have in front of us. And so we combine the rear yard one just into one. Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah, okay. So we have this now broken out. We were on Councillor Cleary, and we've chewed up more, all your time and then some here. If you would like to have the floor for about 2 minutes, I think that's probably where you were, thereabouts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I shouldn't need it all, but so I do feel it's important for us to delve into this one probably more deeply than we've done almost any other one. I was telling our solicitor, this is the first time in the 8 years I've been here, we've gotten to this level of detail in a variance appeal. Typically, we would say yes or no just to what's in front of us. Often, yes. But this is a special circumstance. For me, when we think about those three elements that our development and our planner and our development officer spoke to that we need to consider, in my mind, the intentional disregard, you know, I can understand from a process point of view how one could come to that conclusion, but I think in the heat of the moment, given the war, given everything that was happening, and the property owner's mind, you know, trauma is a funny thing. It can make you want to do things or disregard things as a result, and maybe not even realize you're doing that. The uniqueness of the property, and I understand where our planners are coming from, but one of the characteristics of a property is the owner of the property. In my mind, this is extremely unique in the sense that he's trying to do this. So I'm thinking broader than just the angles and the shape of a lot and the size of it. So anyway, in my mind, I think this requires special consideration. I'm not willing to just approve everything, but I think some consideration around each individual item. As I've already articulated, I think allowing that rear addition is probably something we should do, given the fact that, and this was something the property owner spoke of, the neighbor, and this is the legal non-conforming stuff, the neighbor's property is already close to the property line, and the idea is that the setback isn't from that other building, it's from the property line. And I can understand why you would see, well, they're allowed to build right next to it, how come I can't? And, you know, in the older parts of Halifax, that's quite common. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mancini.
I have a real problem with this. I think Councillor Hinch is right. I think if another neighbor showed up and said, "Oh, I didn't do it. I should have done it. I'm sorry," we'd be saying, "No, don't accept it." I'm sympathetic to the situation the gentleman's in, but I have a real problem with this one. So we can vote on the amendment, but I'm not supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kent.
Yes, thank you. There we go. On the amendment, I'm happy to support this. I think that we set bylaws And there are circumstances where it makes sense. And I think Sean hit the exact nail on the head, which is the space around the trauma of the situation that our Ukrainian friends are in, and the degree by which they are, their whole humanity is driven to protect. And so I don't think that this was full on intentional like we do get in a lot of situations. I really don't. I think there are definitely circumstances that contributed to that. I also think that we need to be the kind of council, I think, that has some regard for those kinds of scenarios. The one caution that I think is worth noting, and this is really around the work that should this the variance motion around allowing the variance go through, that's not the end of the journey for this property owner. There are requirements of building codes, there are requirements of permits, all of those things. And I'm hopeful, I want to speak to it now because I have more minutes. I'm hopeful that the applicant is aware of that, and that there wouldn't be any more do-overs for variance and building code relaxing or any of that. This is it, having them with you here in Canada, is one thing. To have them housed in a safe, well-structured, well-built, within the regulations of the building code for Canada, is something that's important for the property owner, for the family members that are coming, and for the people that live around them. So I just feel like I have to speak to that, because I want that message to get to the property owner who's still in the chamber here with us, that's the journey is, if this goes through, and I don't know if it will or not, but I'm hopeful that it will, that journey, the next part of this is really, really critically important. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the indulgence of a few seconds more.
Thank you, Councillor. And I have one question for staff before we get a little clarification exactly what we're doing here. So if we are voting on these separately, I want to ask the accessory building separation distance. That's between the shed and the existing building, with the deck covered parking area in between. If that one were denied, would the choice for the property owner to comply be to either tear that addition that actually is within the rules off the house, or demolish the shed?
So the shed is closer to the rear, and then I think there was a photo that showed that it's the covered parking area. So I would imagine that perhaps the applicant would cut back the roof of the covered parking area in order to meet that requirement.
That's the variance that is entirely not about an external property line. It's about internal to the property. So okay, thank you for that. Okay, so I think no one's on the board. Solicitor, clerk have been huddling a little bit exactly. Councillor White?
Question? I think.
Go ahead.
I really want to understand, it was talked about that the homeowner does understand about permits being required, because a long time ago, I thought I heard 2014, they got a permit for something. Can you reiterate that, because that's quite significant to me, because that shows that they understood the process. And can you please explain that again?
Yes, the applicant has received permits from us before, one in 2014 to raise the building and another one for home occupation. The applicant's also inquired in the Planning and Development Office as well through email about building permits.
Okay, thank you. That, for me, it's just so many rules broken, and the rules were known, and the one about the deck, that was done before the war, during COVID, if I understand that correctly from the description. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe we'll go to solicitor to clarify
Sure. So
amendment versus separating.
yeah, sure. Thank you through the chair to the community council. I'm going to correct myself from earlier. I don't think we need a motion to amend. Rule 90 of Admin Order 1 does allow that where a question contains distinct propositions upon the request of any member, the vote upon each proposition shall be taken separately. Councillor Cleary made that request. We did something similar, I recall, for the HAF amendments. There was a bundle of them, and we separated out one property or two properties from that and put it up on the screen. So we can treat these motions as being separate motions now. I would just like to remind Council that, you know, the legislative authority, the framework through which you are making this decision, it's page 6 of the report spells it out, and it has been discussed, but 250 sub 1 of the HRM Charter, development officer may grant a variance in a land use bylaw for size or other requirements relating to yards. That's why we're here and why it was being considered in the first place. 250 sub 3, for clarification, a variance may not be granted, and therefore the development officer cannot approve, and this council cannot approve a variance if it violates the intent of the land use bylaw, the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area, or the difficulty experienced results in an intentional disregard for the requirements of the development agreement or a land use bylaw. And so if any of those three things are true, if in your opinion, then you are obligated to refuse the appeal. You are able to come to a different conclusion than what the development officer did on any of those three things. But I would caution that on the second piece, that the difficulty experience is general to properties in the area. In my view, that is in relation to the property itself, not the occupants of a property.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
You're saying they have to have, if it's any one of those things, not, is it, or is it one? Could it be any one of those things? Or is it has to be all of those things?
Through the chair to the community council, section 250 sub 3 of the HRM Charter says a variance may not be granted if A, B, or C. So if A, B, or C is true, accurate, then the variance is not permitted to be approved by a development officer nor by the council.
Okay, thank you for that. Nobody is on the board, so we can go So it's the main motion just separated. So we're going to vote on each of these. It is actually still the main motion. We debated whether this was an amendment, but the conclusion is that this is the main motion just separated into its component pieces, which anyone on council can always ask for, which Councillor Clary has. So we're going to vote through them one at a time, is what we're going to do. So we'll put them up on the screen one by one. The clerk can do that, and then we'll just go through them. We won't rush. We'll make sure everybody knows what we're voting on. Yes.
That is correct. If you vote yes, you are voting to allow the appeal and allow for the variances. And if you vote no, you are voting to refuse the appeal and stick with the decision that the development officer made.
Okay. So question has been called. So we'll vote on number 1. So this is with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the right side yard setback from 1.25 meters to 0 meters and reduce the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 1 meter to accommodate an addition. Okay. So all in favor of allowing the appeal on number 1? All opposed? Okay, so that is defeated. Number 2, with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the accessory building separation distance from 1.25 to 0 meters. All those in favor? All those opposed? So that's a tie. It fails on a tie. 3, with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 0 meters to accommodate the rear deck. There's an N there, but I'm going to just leave it as 3 as it is. Right, Ms. Clerk?
The third one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's because I was still thinking this.
Yeah. And is very legislative. So 3. So this is with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 0 meters to accommodate the rear deck. All those in favor? All those opposed? So that is defeated. 4, with respect to the request for a variance to reduce the left yard side setback from 1.25 to 0 meters to accommodate the left side yard deck. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, so that's defeated. So that concludes our variance appeal. Thank you, staff, and thank you to the applicant. This was not an easy one, and certainly procedurally put our solicitor and clerks through their paces. So thank you all. No, Josh has been waiting all night for his presentation, but we could take a moment if desired. Why don't we take 5 minutes? Yeah, we do need Josh. So I think we'll call the meeting back to order. Maybe if there's a discussion that needs to carry on, it can go out in the hallway. Josh has been waiting all night to present to us, and for a presentation that was rescheduled, officially rescheduled twice, kicked at an agenda review several times. So I think we'll go ahead with that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. So the story of this presentation was it was under the best intentions after the election to help get everyone up to speed on the center plan and what you would be doing here and the reason why we're all sitting here tonight. Things happen, so better late than never, I guess. Hopefully there's still some information in here that's at least useful for you folks, really just to help the new councillors get up to speed and folks that have new, with the boundaries redrawn, that now have areas within the regional centre that didn't previously. And so, I'll start this off as probably every planning presentation does, but just kind of the hierarchy of plans that we're in. So last week, you would have approved phase 4 of the regional plan. So tonight we're going to talk about the center plan, the plan for the regional centers. So this is a secondary plan. So it's a plan that is one step down below the regional plan, but it's incredibly important because it's the plan that contains the land use bylaw regulations, all the rules, the details, the nuts and bolts, and these are how the big policy ideas from the regional plan and everything that we have actually get implemented on a lot by lot basis. And so everything, beneath that, the building permits, the appeals that we have discussions on, everything flows from these secondary community plans. So right now, HRM is still very separated when it comes to community planning, and that is a result of amalgamation that happened in 1996. Currently, we have about 21 or 22 secondary plans, I forget the number. And basically, that's just a result of, Bedford had a plan for Bedford, Sackville had a plan for Sackville, Dartmouth had a plan for Dartmouth, and all of those are still in place. The vision and the thing that our team is hard working at is really to get this down into 3 plans. So we'll have the regional plan as an overarching, and then we have the center plan, which is already in place. We are working right now. Our next big task is the suburban plan. We will start talking about that a lot more in the near future, so stay tuned. And what that is that's going to be one plan for all the suburban areas within HRM, so the areas with water and sewer, within the service boundary that are outside of the regional center. And then later down the road as well, we will work on one comprehensive plan for the rural area, but that's going to be probably a few years out. So, talking about the center plan, looking at the regional center, you can see on the map on the left here the area that it covers. So this is Peninsula Halifax and Central Dartmouth within the CERC. So this is the area of the planning boundaries. It is certainly a very important part of the municipality. Despite making up about 1% of HRM's land area, it does contain about 25% of the population and about a quarter of the tax base as well. So when we talk about the efficiencies of density, of preventing sprawl, this is a really good example of an area of the municipality that has a lot going for it in terms of economics and culture and vibrancy and community. What's interesting as well is with the draft regional plan that you folks adopted and with the IMP, that direction, we're looking to actually accommodate up to 40% of future growth into the regional center. We talked about a municipality of 1 million people in 25 years. That means that about 200,000 people are coming to the regional center potentially within the next 25 years. So what our team is really working on is, where are these people going to go? Where are they going to work? Where are they going to shop? Where are they going to go to school? What parks are going to be there? So this is all the work that we do in thinking about that future growth. So why center plan? So previously in the old planning framework, with the different jurisdictional boundaries as there were also many plans dividing this area. And it was also a very discretionary process, which means that If someone wanted to get something built, you're likely going to go through some type of rezoning process, some type of development agreement process. This is very time consuming. You'd have councillors getting lobbied for different developers to do certain things. You'd have many meetings within the communities, a lot of debates, a lot of staff resources. And the end result is that things get built very slowly and very painfully. So with the center plan, the goal was to streamline this, really focus on and developing more prescriptive regulations to allow an as-of-right framework where development is more permissible. And so that has been essentially the work that has gone in here. So starting back in 2015 with Engage and Define, and there's been years of research, analysis, public engagement, and finally coming into adoption over 2 phases, and with Package A in 2019 and Package V in 2021. So the center plan is based on 4 core concepts. So this is stuff that you probably would have seen already. There's similar language in the regional plan as well. So the ideas of complete communities, making sure that folks have access to places that they need to work, daycares, shop, and live all within a reasonable distance of their place of residence. That development be human scale, so really focusing on urban design and making sure that new buildings are contributing to the public realm, contributing to attractive streetscapes. This idea of pedestrians first, so making sure that, again, new development is pedestrian friendly, that we're building, a grid and active transportation that is really supporting people that are walking and rolling around the municipality. And then this idea of strategic growth as well, because the regional center, while it does have a lot of population, there's still a lot of military bases, Department of National Defense, there's an active port, so there's still a lot of industrial lands along our waterfront. And so how do we have those 2 uses mix that can often be very challenging? So how do we accommodate the growth while also keeping a good quality of life for residents? So within the plan, we have a bunch of policy topics. I could talk about this all day, but I'm going to just focus in on some of the ones that I think are maybe more important for you folks that you'll come across in your day-to-day. So I'm going to talk about urban design, which is really about, it's the foundation, the crux of the plan is really based on this concept of urban design. Urban design being the relationship between a new building and the public realm, the street that it's facing, a new building and its neighboring lots, its surrounding context. So center plan really takes this and does a lot of things. We have a lot of very prescriptive regulations, again, getting into that as-of-right framework to make sure that new development is contributing positively to the streetscape. So if you're on a commercial corridor, it's making sure that we have street walls that are, more low-rise. The towers are set back further away from the street. We have lots of active uses on the ground floor, or just uses that can be accessed by the street. We do also have very important regulations that help to promote transition between higher density areas and lower density residential areas. Within this, we have a number of different rules and regulations, from floor area ratio, which is just maximum amount of density that you can build, maximum building height. We have various protected views down to the waterfront from different locations, protected views from the Citadel to the waterfront. We do have protections from wind and shadow, so every new development over a certain height needs to provide a study that shows that they're not making, not creating a wind tunnel on the street that they're building. We do have requirements for pedestrian-oriented commercial streets, which, are temporarily kind of on hold with the province's minimum plan requirements, but it's still baked into the plan that when those expire, we do require active uses on certain important streets within the regional center. Another key policy topic for us is culture and heritage. So with the center plan came the creation of new heritage conservation districts and proposed heritage conservation districts. This was a new approach that didn't really exist in previous planning documents. So right now we have one registered heritage conservation district, which is Schmidtville, but we have 17 others that are proposed. So within these other areas, we do have regulations that kind of keep density low. We want to protect this building stock with the idea that there will be future studies for these areas, future regulations and designs that will be brought forward at some time when our staff are able to get around to it. So the next 2 that are coming up are really the capital district, so right here in downtown Halifax, and downtown Dartmouth as well, where study is underway. Another kind of key topic that I just wanted to touch on is bonus zoning. You might have heard of this, you might not have. This is essentially a public benefit that's required when new development occurs, specifically within regional center. So depending on where you are, we have the regional center broken down into different market rate districts based on land values, a study that was done a number of years ago. And if you're building, let's say, a high-rise building, you need to contribute basically to the public benefit. We require a contribution of 60% to be to affordable housing. Typically, that's taken in the form of cash in lieu, and then that cash is then used to run our affordable housing grant program. We are able to give money directly to nonprofits to build deeply affordable housing with that. That comes from private development building through bonus zoning. And then the other 40% can either be additional, public housing. It could be public art on site, improvements to parks or other things within the municipal right-of-way, improvements to heritage buildings. So a very successful program that's really helped fund a lot of actually really unique and interesting projects within the nonprofit sector. So that's an important piece that, again, we're looking to hopefully expand as well in this thinking of suburban plan as well, and how this can apply more broadly. The plan, like all other planning documents that we have, does distribute all the properties within the regional center into different designations, and then within those designations into different zones. And it's within those zones that dictate what you're allowed to build, what you're allowed to do with your property in terms of your property rights. So a couple of the key designations, we do have 2 downtowns within regional center, so downtown Halifax and downtown Dartmouth. They each have their own zones, and they each have kind of their very own unique built form urban design framework that is special to those areas, just because, there are, it's kind of where the conversation started around urban design was in downtown Halifax, and then it expanded from there. And with those downtowns, obviously there's a lot of very important historic heritage resources. So there are certain protections that are, again, coming forward in the near future to help reflect kind of the unique character and identity of those areas. But they are obviously our major growth areas. We expect a lot more development to occur. Some of it's occurring right now as we speak, and certainly more in the future. But there's just a layer of many different regulations in place to help also protect, that vibrancy and that culture that certainly people value when they visit Halifax. The next major designation would be the center designation. So this is probably where we're seeing most of the construction recently. Certainly, this is an area where we actually allow our tallest buildings, now up to 40 stories with amendments that we made last year. So taller than what we allow in the downtowns. An example of this would be probably the Wise Road Center. It's maybe the most dramatic in terms of construction that we're seeing with all the cranes up. But there are 7 centers across the city. It includes Goddardton Street as well. A lot of transformation happening there. Quinpool Road, Roby and Yonge. So a lot of areas that are centrally located near major transit routes, and basically just, again, fulfilling that that idea of complete communities, making sure that people can live next to where there's services, next to where there's transit. And so that's areas that we've identified for basically the highest growth within the municipality. The next is the corridor designation. So these are more secondary streets where they typically abut some type of transit corridor. The difference between these areas and the centers is that the centers zones are typically separated from low density residential uses, whereas the corridors always abut low density residential. And so this is where these rules that we have around transition from high density to low density are extremely important, because the corridors allow buildings anywhere from 3 to 9 stories in height, but there's basically always going to be a single family home or a low-rise residential building right up against it in the rear yard. So we have very prescriptive, very important regulations that dictate, separation distances from the property lines, step backs on the upper floors to provide a little bit more relief to those low-rise neighborhoods, landscaping requirements and all sorts of things to help make sure that that transition is palatable. And this was one of the big things when developing the plan. This is the stuff that's really difficult for communities in terms of what's happening in my backyard, understanding that cities are going to grow, neighborhoods are going to change, but it's that importance, that attention to detail that really I think got people on board with Center Plan. And this is still a model that's used actually like nationally as an example of really how to accommodate density. So the principles are still very sound. Not saying that it's perfect and not saying that we don't have challenges, but certainly it's one of the major components with this zone and with the urban design requirements as to why Center Plan has been so successful in accommodating a lot of growth. So we do have about 17 corridors throughout Regional Center. So again, these are streets like Agricola, Bears Road, Rotary Street in the south end, Windmill Road in Dartmouth, Victoria Road. So there's a number of them throughout the municipality as well. A lot of them you'll see construction have started. A lot of them, it might be a kind of a dramatic change when people start to realize that, those houses that are there, or that, convenience store that was there, or that gas station that was there previously is actually zoned for 7 to 9 stories. And we're going to see a lot more development along these corridors in the future. And then the next major, designation is the established residential. So this is your typical, low-rise neighborhoods, used to predominantly consist of an ER1 zone that no longer exists for single unit dwellings. It now consists of 4 zones. So the established residential 2 is predominantly for the proposed Heritage Conservation District. So it has a little bit more control over what happens in those areas. And then the established residential 3, which applies now quite broadly. And it allows everything from a single family home up to 8 units, depending on lot size. And then the last designation to talk about, and you'll hear about these every now and again, are future growth nodes. So like the centers, these are areas that are identified for future growth, but they have not been zoned to accommodate as of right development just yet, because there is a need for more in-depth study. Oftentimes this includes, multiple property owners, so making sure that people are talking to each other to ensure that they're providing the correct connections to adjacent lands, that we're working together on infrastructure and all the things that are needed. So these are areas that are under, more distinct secondary planning, more detailed studies before development comes forward. And these will all come to council for approval as well. So you'll start to see these as they come out. Certainly, I think there's going to be a few within the next year or so, which is really exciting. And just kind of to highlight some of the recent zoning changes as well. So in 2023, HRM signed on to the Housing Accelerator Fund. This was really a result of the housing trends that we were seeing. There was an increasing housing gap within the municipality, so we were not building enough housing for our population. There was a very sharp increase in the number of people moving here, so the population was growing very rapidly. And so, the HRM signed on to this Housing Accelerator Fund with the idea of reducing barriers to building housing, among many other actions. And so what that led down to is actually zoning changes within the Center Plan, which were approved just over a year ago in 2024. And zoning changes in many other planning areas as well to be more permissive with what we allow. So again, some of the bigger changes did include that change to the established residential zones that I talked about. So allowing a minimum of 4 units on a lot wherever there's water and sewer across the municipality. And then within the regional center, that'll actually increase to allow up to 8 units on a lot, depending on lot size. So just to give folks an idea of what we engaged on last year and what was ultimately approved and in the regulations today is in front of you. So this idea of how neighborhoods can change over time. So on this sheet, you'll see everything from single-family homes up to duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, and apartment blocks with 8 units in them. It was interesting. I heard the conversation last week at over the regional plan, and certainly there were some residents and some folks that were starting to see concerns, and I think this is something that we're going to be coming back with in the near future. And I've had some conversations with residents and with councillors here as well. So it's been really interesting because it's been a year since the rules have come in. We've seen a lot of genuinely interesting stuff happen. But there's also been some stuff that I think, maybe we can all agree could use some improvement. So our goal, having been a year in now, is that we have some good data. So we want to come back to council with a bit of an information report, how these regulations have been performing, how many new units have been created, but then also start to identify some of the trends that we think could be improved, at least from a built form, aesthetics perspective. So the role of these councils, I don't think I need this slide, but the reason why the Regional Center Community Council is typically not very busy is just because you don't deal with development agreements here as the other community councils do. So it's really just the site plan appeals, LUB amendments, and the odd planner that wants to talk your ear off about how the center plan works. So again, our team really, we have been doing very well at undertaking regular reviews of the center plan, keeping it up to date. I think that's been one of the big successes of the plan, is that it is a living document. We are able to respond to market trends when things do come up. A key example of that is actually the very first meeting that we had this year was for the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. They needed some amendments to support them. They're now under construction. We were able to do that very quickly. And so that's some of the good work that needs to happen to make sure that our planning documents stay relevant. And so we'll be back, on a frequent basis, hopefully not too frequently though, with just some ideas to help improve the administration of the bylaw. And if you have any questions or any developers that are always asking you about, site-specific requests, please just send them our way. We will love to have a chat with them and explain the process, and just some resources and links for you there if you need them. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh, for the presentation. It's much appreciated. And your patience tonight and through multiple meetings to get to this moment. Councillor Kent.
Yeah, Josh, I've been looking forward to this. And I'm really glad you came here and talked about this, because now I have a gazillion questions. And now we're going to have a meeting. Because I would like you to pull up, if you can, slide 11. That color-coded space am I hearing it right and reading it right and sort of looking at it from the perspective, it's almost like creating precincts of as of right. Is that kind of what it is? I mean, it doesn't matter what we call it, but all these colors indicate the as of right allowable land uses, correct?
Thank you for the question, through the chair to the councillor. Yeah, so this is just a snapshot of one of the areas. So this is focusing in on the Commons, Roby Street, Quinpool. So this is showing the different colors represent different designations.
Right. And so then when I look at the bottom, we've got and where my head's going to is I need tools. This brain's just not going to be able to carry a lot of that around. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to have to bother you all the time. So this Explore HRM, I'm just going to pull that. It'll help me leave it. Explore HRM. I have been trying to follow a lot of what the use is. Enter. Okay, so now, if I zone in on the center area, how do I know when I get to it? Where my brain is that the degree by which I could read a community plan, it's planning language, and every planning language that I've ever read usually has amendments at the back of it. So I never know if I'm reading it right or not, if what I'm getting is right or not. This tool that you've linked us to, is that sort of going to get us into that space and allow us to see what a particular property is allowed to do? Because we get the calls, right? Which you know. I don't, how much time do I have left, Mr. Chair? Oh, good. Okay, so I'll carry on. I'm just gonna try to get in here, and I see Dartmouth. So if I pick a property, there, okay. And forgive me, colleagues, for doing this, but this is sort of our first crack at this. So I don't know, it doesn't, so what I've just found, for instance, is the property identifier, assessment count number, I don't have to waste our time here. This is an offline thing. I think you need to train me to figure out how the tools are. And the other point I want to say, Mr. Chair, is I'm so glad you guys did this for us. Now we have to try to do it on our own, do the next step ourselves, which you guys will probably sit back and enjoy watching the show, right? Ugh. I get it completely about why we would want to condense the 22 community plans. They're mostly all outdated and, amendment after amendment after amendment. So we can clarify them all. And what we're going to do is just to help me understand how you got here is we're going out to the community and having real conversations, teaching them about what we did here, but recognizing those communities are suburban, so their tolerances probably are different. The challenges geographically are different. Even the community interplay with each other, the smaller neighborhoods, right? That it all comes to the table, and your team, the planning team, will go out and do exercises with them that we get to hash over here in council. Will we as councillors get a lot of time with you along that journey, or somebody, I say you being planning, to help us get to where we understand where we're going to land? Because what I remember the most about me coming back to council is Sam coming in and saying, I need this property off the list. It needs to be now XYZ. And Way doing the same, and Clary doing the same, right? All of them doing that. So I'm a little overwhelmed. Okay, I'm just going to stop there for a minute now. I might come back, Mr. Chair. Whew.
Josh, I don't know, is there anything you want to respond there?
Yeah, just that, absolutely, we'll be working very closely with members of council and the community on the engagement with the suburban plan. Certainly we're just at the, just starting to have conversations with the community about what they would like to see. So, when we talk about density, there's no, we're not talking about the same levels of density as regional center, right? We understand that each community is different. Even though it's going to be under one planning framework, there's likely going to be different rules tailored for certain areas. So even within center plan, we have special areas that apply to, North End Halifax. So they have different rules than the South End, right? Because we recognize that those areas are distinct. So there's going to be a similar approach or similar framework, but certainly not the same assumptions about, density, where density is going. So those are all conversations that we are excited to have, certainly. Yeah.
Councillor Hinch.
Thank you, Chair. Josh, you've heard me time and time again about height restrictions, things of that nature. You mentioned Godigan Street. Did you say 17 stories on Godigan Street? Is that what you meant to say? Or am I getting that wrong? Please tell me I'm getting that wrong.
So there's, thank you for the question, Chair, to the councillors. There's a section of Godigan Street that is within that center designation. So the default height allowance, if you look on the map, it's going to say 40 stories. The reality is there are other policy factors at play that would limit the height. So a big factor on Godigan is the Citadel ramparts. So views from the Citadel, which restrict the height in that area of the city to probably about 15 to 20 stories in some areas, and in some cases even lower than that. And floor area ratio also plays a role, right? The amount of buildable density you can have. So there's a lot of flexibility, but for Gottingen and for certain areas of downtown, the maximum height is not actually what's shown on the map. It's actually a calculation that would have to be done site by site by a surveyor to determine what that height is from actually a view plane coming in from the Citadel. So it's a bit tricky on a site by site basis to really speak of, but certainly there's, I think, a couple buildings going up right now on Gottingen. One of them, I think, is earmarked for either 17 or 20 stories. It's well under construction.
Are you talking about Gottingen and Cogswell?
Not quite at Cogswell, but that would be certainly another one that's under construction as well. There's it's maybe an 8 or 10 story there. The height really like decreases as you get closer to the Citadel Hill because of that view plane.
It decreases.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's further down north of Gottingen or going down?
Yeah, only to a point. And again, the zoning does flip at some point from a center back to a corridor and higher order residential. So there's different heights that apply. So if you have a specific property in mind, maybe we can sit down and have a look at the map, and that might help answer your questions.
Complete communities. Would that include like new schools as well? Like, are you guys, having those conversations? Because I know there's a couple of schools that are probably way at the seams, such as Oxford and Joseph Howe. So when we talk about complete, when we're building these high buildings for families and all, I mean, are we looking at new schools for the districts as well?
And yeah, thanks for that question again. So schools are tricky because they're provincial, but we do certainly have conversations with our servicing partners at HRCE on demand. So I think they certainly realize the crunch that they're having in terms of enrollment and certain areas of the city. So yeah, we share information with them quite frequently about where we expect development to go. And, on a case-by-case basis when development comes in, and we try to work with them as best we can when they're looking for either sites or, we're trying to also see if there's opportunities for maybe new development to even host a school, maybe on the bottom floors and then have residential on top. So that kind of co-location of infrastructure, those are all conversations that we have, yeah.
Okay. What about grocery stores?
Yeah, grocery stores are another one. So they are, permitted very broadly across regional center. Like, we really want more grocery stores. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, like in a lot of cases, the market demand for whatever it is just, doesn't seem to be there. So it's tough. Like, we can't really force people in an as of right framework to build certain things, but it's certainly like you wouldn't find many barriers to our zoning in terms of someone wanting to do it. We'd be very excited if someone wanted to build a grocery store. So it's allowed in the framework. It's just something that has been really difficult for us to see actually realized. Yeah.
What if there's a restrictive covenant in the area, say for a grocery store?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, the city doesn't manage restrictive covenants. So if someone wanted to come in and build a grocery store, we'd issue them the permit. And it's a civil matter between whoever feels the need to enforce that covenant and the property owner. Mm-hmm. Certainly within the HRM charter, there was changes recently to allow the CAO to discharge covenants when there's a disagreement between the covenant and the allowable density on site. So it might be nice if we could have maybe similar legislation around grocery stores or services and other types of covenants as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just picking up on what Councillor Kent and Councillor Hinch said. So I'd be happy to, Josh can do it, but I'd be happy to sit down with you guys and walk you through on halifax.ca how to get to all of this information, community plan areas. Look at this 22. I confirmed that. I counted them all. And regional center is one of those. And there are structure maps, height precincts. Like, you could find everything that's in there. So if you have a question, it's pretty easy to find it. Happy to walk you through that. The other thing was, when we went through this, six and a half years ago now, when we really started digging into this through the community design advisory committee, or community development advisory committee, whatever, with the CDAC. On grocery stores, we looked at how our zoning previous to this in the old Halifax Peninsula bylaw and the Dartmouth bylaws were creating food deserts in the sense that we had lots of spaces. You could not legally build grocery stores. So the more permissive zoning, especially with the centers and the corridors, this mixed use zoning allows for that in a lot of these places. In fact, when you zoom back and you look at those red and purples on the structure map, it's in most of the areas, and you're never more than a couple minute walk from any place that could be a grocery store. If you're not following it, I highly recommend the Competition Bureau, the Federal Competition Bureau in Canada, is doing an analysis right now and using Nova Scotia as an example in their analysis of restrictive covenants around grocery stores. They started this looking at Sobeys and Superstore. And so stay tuned on what the feds may do about this. But certainly if there's direction, I think to Josh's point, the provincial government, which has, and in Ontario, they've done this too. So they looked at things like restrictive covenants where you couldn't build a clothesline. And they've abandoned those. I mean, all over Ottawa, the suburbs didn't allow that, for example. We didn't allow that in certain parts of Nova Scotia. That was a provincial-wide covenant lift. So you never know what we can do. But one of the great things, when you look at those structure maps and the height precincts, and for corridors, and to Josh's point around growth centers, there's two elements to that, the floor area ratio and the height. You could do up to 30 or 40 stories in the growth centers almost everywhere, but you actually can't, in the sense that if you've got a floor area ratio of 2 or 3 or 4, you'd essentially have to have a building as, you know, with a floor plate the size of the desk where the solicitor and the CAO and the mayor sit in order to get up that high, because you just wouldn't be able to build something that tall. In most of our areas, Quinpool Road's a great example. So the height is at one end, it comes down at the other. Your growth centers on Gottingen only go up as far as, what would that be? Cornwallis, what do we call that now? Nora Bernard. And so from there down, you're to Cogswell, your growth center, your corridor up to Buddy Day and just past Buddy Day. And then higher order residential, which also allows for neighborhood commercial. So you could do like cafes, grocery stores, that kind of stuff within higher order residential, which is a lot of that area. So we should chat and talk to the planners as well. But there's a lot of really great stuff. I think that when you see more of it about the center plan, you really like it. There might be some other stuff you still don't like, but I think a lot of it you go, you know what, actually that makes a lot of sense. I see why you did that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Josh. 2 questions. One is the floor area ratio. Like, are you given a number? Like, what's the variable there? And then just that I want to see more townhouses and cluster housing, and where is that allowed and how can it happen?
Yeah, thank you very much to the chair, through the councillors. So floor area ratio is a number that's assigned to each property. So there is actually a map that you can go and check, and it shows you what your floor area ratio is. So again, it's on that link of like community planning into center plan. There's a long list of maps. One of them will be floor area ratio, and then each property where it applies is assigned a number. And so that is basically, it's your lot size times floor area ratio. That's your allowable buildable density. So that really controls what you're allowed to do on the site. Okay. And then in terms of townhouses, cluster housing, so yeah, townhouses are permitted very broadly now. That was one of the changes that we made last year. Again, it's only been a year, so we'll wait and see what the results are. But certainly it's challenging to do townhouses just generally, because ultimately what you need is many lots to be consolidated to do a townhouse. And there's not really a lot of lots like that left, probably in District 7 anyways, maybe some areas more in Dartmouth. But certainly it's an allowable typology that's pretty broadly allowed right now. Yeah.
Okay, so you'd need to buy a few lots and then you could do it.
I mean, the nature of a townhouse is that they're low, but they're also long. So typically, if you're looking at like infill development within an already established residential neighborhood, probably, you'd need more than just one lot to do a townhouse. You'd probably need a couple of lots. So that land assembly and consolidation can be time consuming. If there's other larger lots that are like vacant today for whatever reason, certainly they could be replaced with a townhouse.
Okay, and where does cluster housing happen?
So cluster housing happens, there's two zones, cluster housing 1 and 2. They are very sparsely used within Regional Center. There's maybe, less than 4 or 5 properties total that have that zoning. I think a couple of them are in Dartmouth. There might be one somewhere on the peninsula, but essentially what that does is that just allows like multiple buildings on one property, typically a lower density. So again, it's really intended for larger properties with kind of irregular shapes. If you're in just kind of your typical neighborhood where the lots are already divided, everybody has street frontage, it's not really something you'd expect to see.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to just, since everyone's spoken once, before we go back to Councillor Cleary, I'll just volunteer. I mean, one of the things that I find with the center plan that's kind of challenging is just the kind of dynamic with resident, because everybody knew what the old system was. And I still run into people who haven't caught on to the changes that have made and what that means for their ability to know what's happening in a project in their neighborhood, because they don't get the whole kind of public hearing thing anymore. And then in the corridors, in the higher order residential, there's a specific story limit on the properties, so people can kind of get their heads around what's going to happen there. It's way harder in the growth centers where it's like, okay, so, growth centers and downtown zoning. So in downtown Dartmouth, what can you do with this property, right? It's like, well, when they look up, they see 40 stories, you're going to put 40 stories there. It's like, well, no, because you got to work through the design setback requirements and all these kinds of things, and then take the most important thing, take that floor area ratio number into account. So what I have been telling people, and the planner might cringe or might be, well, that's kind of ballpark. What I typically say, so in downtown Dartmouth, the highest floor area ratio, I think it's 9, and it's on the provincial property that's empty across from that's been empty forever, across from King's Wharf. So that's the highest one, where we're expecting really big building eventually. The lowest ones are like 1.75, so that's on a registered heritage property. So typically when I'm explaining to residents, trying to bridge that gap, I'll say, well, I'll tell them that range. The highest density you can get is a 9. The lowest is 1.75. So if it's a high number, close to 9, you're going to get a big building. If it's a low number, down near 1.75, it's going to be a low building. And if it's something in between, it'll be something kind of in between, right? So that's how I've been kind of trying to express taking something that was, that's hard to define. So that's how I do it. I did have one question for you, Josh. Perhaps where there is that old system that people are still familiar with development agreements, could you share with council what are the situations where that old system, because there are a couple into the center plan, where it is actually still landing to us for a development agreement type decision?
Yeah, certainly. So thanks for that question. So I think, and maybe you've dealt with some development agreements already on other community councils, but certainly probably the most frequent development agreement option we have are for heritage properties. So properties that are, have a heritage designation or potentially within the proposed heritage conservation district. If folks are looking to, maintain that heritage asset, typically they can get additional density as well. So that might look like, in addition to the building, or maybe a building beside that building that just has, more flexibility given to it. Certainly we have development agreement options for neighborhood commercial within the established residential areas. So if someone wants to do a cafe, for instance, in an ER zone, it is permitted, but it has to go through a development agreement process. So that's just an opportunity to make the neighbors aware, and council can make that decision. Other than that, there's a few options that are rarely used. On larger lots, there might be an option for a development agreement, or within a future growth node, which would be a more comprehensive process. But there's really not much there, as opposed to kind of some of the other planning frameworks that we still have in the suburban areas, where everything is by development agreement. So,
thank you, Josh. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a development agreement come to us for the Selby's Bunker on Chebucto and it's kind of Willow Street, between Chebucto and Willow Street, the old Gibson's Antique. And that was neighborhood commercial in an established residential zone. And the FARs are found in map 3 of the SMPS. And, you know, as Councillor, our Chair Austin was saying, Quinpool Road, for example, you can get like 2.5, 2.25 maybe on the Pepperell Street side of some of those growth center zones, whereas on the other side it might be a 5 or a 6, and further down it's, you know, 7s and 8s. The tallest ones would be when you get up to like Yonge Street. I think we've got 10s up there in those ones. In a lot of areas where actually there's already building, so it's not likely to be utilized anytime soon. But correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. So I think it was Councillor White asked about the cluster zones. So they are sparse at the moment, but I believe we wrote into the policy that if you were in an established residential zone, you could apply as of right for a rezoning to cluster. So you didn't have to get an amendment to the regional plan or the SMPS. That would simply be a bylaw change for the zone. I think there might have been an application maybe on Quinpool that was abandoned. I'm not sure if they're still continuing it. I know there's one that they're considering down further, and none of those have come into us yet, so I'm not sure if they've made application or what stage they're at. But I don't think we've had any rezonings to cluster yet, have we?
Thanks for the question through the councillor. So there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of chatter, there's maybe potentially some new interests in different areas. But yeah, I in my time of being here, I haven't seen a rezoning to cluster housing, but certainly it is one of those few enabled options that anyone can apply to rezone. And again, there's a process to go through. Council will make the decision.
Yeah, and it would come to a public hearing, to be public engagement,
Absolutely.
as any development agreement would.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to your point about they're well, so far rare, because you have to have certain kind of lot, certain kind of size, certain kind of restriction that you can't do something with established residential that you would want, or it's an opportunity site where you would be able to put some cluster in there, you know, tiny homes, that kind of thing. And those so far, you know, when you look at especially the older parts of the already established residential areas of the center plan, pretty few and far between. So I mean, the opportunity is there. It's just you have to have the right opportunity to make it available. We haven't seen any come forward yet. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So that clears the board. Thank you, Josh, for coming in and making this presentation for us and sharing. Thank you. So, okay, so that concludes both of our main items. So, Section 11, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. We did clarify correspondence, I believe, Ms. Clerk. Was there anything else?
Yes, correspondence was received just for item 10.1.1.
Yeah, and we've got that. Petitions. Anyone have any petitions tonight? None. Presentations, none. Public participation. I suppose I have to call anyway. Would anyone like to present to us tonight? Would anyone like to present to us tonight? Would anybody like to present to us tonight? All right, that is done. Oh. Information items, none. Reports, none. Motions, none. In camera, none. No added items. Any notices of motion? None. So the date of our next meeting is August 27th, and since Councillor Kent is over there, I'm assuming she's volunteering to make the motion to adjourn.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Becky Kent, and I live in Eastern Passage. I'm here to talk about the councillor that is adjacent to my councillor.
I think we'll call this out of order and say we're adjourned.
Adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Thank you.